King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, the complete legend. Chapter 1. The Prophecy and the Sword in the Stone. Long before the name Arthur echoed through the halls of legend, Britain was a fractured land, torn apart by warring tribes and the remnants of Roman rule. Chaos reigned, and the once mighty island teetered on the edge of ruin. It was during this time that the enigmatic figure of Merlin, a sorcerer of immeasurable wisdom and power, emerged from the mists of myth. It was Merlin who foresaw the rise of a king destined to unite the realm, a leader whose name would endure for centuries. Merlin's prophecy spoke of a child born of both noble blood and destiny, someone who would bring peace to a divided Britain. Yet the path to greatness was fraught with danger. Uther Pendragon, the ruler of Britain, longed for an heir to carry his legacy. But his desire for Lady Igraine, the wife of another man, plunged him into moral and political peril. It was Merlin who offered Uther a solution. Through magic, he could disguise himself and win Igraine's love, but the price was steep. Merlin demanded that the child born of this union be entrusted to his care. Uther, blinded by his passion, agreed, setting the prophecy in motion. Thus Arthur was born under the shadow of destiny. To protect him from Uther's enemies, Merlin spirited the infant away and placed him in the care of Sir Ector, a loyal and humble knight. Arthur grew up unaware of his true heritage, raised as a simple squire alongside Sir Ector's son, Kay. While Kay prepared to become a knight, Arthur served faithfully, learning the values of loyalty, humility, and hard work. Though his lineage was hidden, his natural charisma and kindness set him apart even in his youth. As Arthur grew, Britain's chaos deepened. With Uther's death, the kingdom was left without a clear heir. Rival factions vied for power, plunging the land into turmoil. Amidst the disorder, a mysterious stone appeared in the courtyard of a cathedral in London. Embedded in the stone was a gleaming sword, its blade etched with the words, "Whoso pulleth out this sword of this stone, and anvil is rightwise king born of all England." The sword became a symbol of hope and divine intervention. Knights and nobles from across the land flocked to London, each attempting to pull the sword from the stone. One by one they failed, their efforts leaving the sword unyielding. Weeks turned into months, and the stone remained steadfast, a silent testament to the absence of a true leader. It was during this time that Sir Ector and his sons traveled to London to attend a grand tournament. Sir Kay, now a knight, was eager to prove his worth. Arthur, as his squire, was responsible for preparing Kay's armor and ensuring his readiness for battle. On the morning of the tournament, disaster struck. Kay's sword had been left behind at their lodging. In a panic, Kay sent Arthur to retrieve it. Rushing through the streets of London, Arthur found himself lost. It was then that he stumbled upon the sword in the stone. Seeing no one around and desperate to return to the tournament, Arthur approached the stone. With no understanding of the sword's significance, he grasped the hilt and pulled. To his surprise, the blade slid free, as if it had been waiting for him all along. Arthur hurried back to Kay, presenting him with the sword. Kay, recognizing it immediately, was stunned. He confessed the truth to Sir Ector, who insisted they return to the cathedral. There, in front of the gathered nobles and clergy, Arthur was asked to replace the sword in the stone and draw it once more. As the young squire pulled the blade free for a second time, gasps filled the air. The impossible had happened. The sword had chosen a king. Many doubted the boy's worthiness. He was, after all, an untested youth with no noble claim, at least none that was known. Yet Merlin, ever watchful, stepped forward and revealed Arthur's true lineage as the son of Uther Pendragon. The nobles had no choice but to accept the will of the prophecy and the sword. Arthur was crowned King of Britain, his ascent marking the beginning of a new era. With Excalibur in hand and Merlin at his side, Arthur's journey had only just begun. The young king, forged by humility and guided by destiny, would face trials that tested his resolve, unite a fractured kingdom, and build a legacy that would echo through the ages. But for now, he stood as a symbol of hope, a boy destined to become the greatest king in Britain's history. Chapter 2. The Rise of King Arthur. Arthur's coronation marked the beginning of a new chapter for Britain, a nation fractured by years of war and political discord. As the young king took his place on the throne, hope surged across the land. Yet, his path to unifying Britain would not be easy. Rival lords, still nursing ambitions for power, viewed Arthur as an unproven boy rather than a true leader. The weight of the crown was heavy, but Arthur was determined to rise to the challenge. The ceremony at Westminster Abbey was a grand affair. Nobles, knights, and commoners alike gathered to witness the boy who had pulled the sword from the stone ascend to greatness. Merlin, ever the guardian of Arthur's destiny, stood at his side, whispering words of wisdom. The young king's first decree was simple yet profound. The time for division was over. He vowed to unite the warring factions under a single banner, forging a kingdom rooted in justice, honor, and peace. Arthur's early reign was defined by his campaigns to bring Britain under his control. Traveling from village to village, he sought not only to conquer, but to inspire. Arthur's charisma and fairness won over many who had resisted him. With Merlin's guidance, he defeated rebellious lords and forged alliances with those who saw his vision for a united Britain. Among his most trusted allies was Sir Bedivere, a steadfast knight who would serve as Arthur's right hand during these early struggles. As peace began to take root, Arthur turned his attention to creating a symbol of his reign, a castle that would stand as a beacon of unity and strength. Thus, Camelot was born. Situated on a hill overlooking lush green valleys, Camelot was unlike any castle Britain had ever seen. Its high towers and fortified walls reflected Arthur's strength, while its grand halls symbolized his commitment to justice and community. Within Camelot, Arthur established the Round Table, a revolutionary idea that would come to define his legacy. Unlike traditional feasting tables, which placed the king at the head, the Round Table had no head or foot. Every knight who sat there was equal, a reflection of Arthur's belief in shared responsibility and mutual respect. The table was more than furniture. It was an ideology. Those who sat at the Round Table swore an oath to uphold justice, protect the weak, and serve the greater good. Merlin, whose influence on Arthur remained unparalleled, played a crucial role in shaping the king's vision. The sorcerer was both mentor and confidant, using his vast knowledge to guide Arthur's decisions. Merlin also possessed a knack for strategy, often foreseeing threats and opportunities before they arose. While some whispered that Merlin's magic was dangerous, Arthur saw it as a necessary force in a kingdom still haunted by chaos. The foundation of Camelot and the Round Table attracted some of the greatest knights in Britain, each bringing unique skills and stories. Among them was Sir Lancelot du Lac, a knight of unmatched valor and skill. Lancelot's arrival at Camelot marked a turning point in Arthur's reign, as the two men formed a bond of deep respect and friendship. Yet, as history would later reveal, this friendship was destined to be tested in ways neither could foresee. Another pivotal figure in Arthur's story was Guinevere, a noblewoman of remarkable beauty and intelligence. Arthur first met her during one of his campaigns to unify Britain, and their connection was immediate. Guinevere's grace and wisdom complemented Arthur's strength and vision, and it was not long before she became his queen. Their marriage symbolized a union not only of two people, but of the kingdom itself. Together, they represented the hope of a prosperous and peaceful future. Despite the celebrations of Camelot's rise, Arthur's reign was not without its challenges. The newly formed kingdom faced threats from both within and beyond its borders. Old rivalries among the knights simmered beneath the surface, while external enemies sought to exploit any sign of weakness. Yet Arthur's leadership and the camaraderie of the Round Table held the kingdom together. As Camelot flourished, it became a center of culture and learning. Scholars, poets, and artists were drawn to its halls, and its influence spread far beyond Britain's shores. Arthur's knights embarked on quests across the land, defending the innocent and upholding the ideals of the Round Table. Their deeds became legendary, inspiring hope and admiration among the people. Among these early quests was Lancelot's victory over the treacherous Sir Tarquin, who had imprisoned dozens of knights. This act solidified Lancelot's reputation as the finest knight of Camelot, earning him the unwavering respect of his peers. Meanwhile, Sir Gawain, known for his loyalty and courage, emerged as a cornerstone of Arthur's court. These knights, along with others like Sir Percival and Sir Tristan, embodied the values Arthur sought to instill in his kingdom. Yet, beneath the surface of Camelot's splendor, subtle tensions began to form. Guinevere's growing admiration for Lancelot, though innocent at first, hinted at a future fraught with conflict. Merlin, too, grew increasingly troubled by visions of a shadow on the horizon, a threat that could undo all Arthur had achieved. Despite these concerns, the king remained steadfast, determined to build a legacy that would endure. By the end of these early years, Arthur had transformed Britain. What was once a fractured land had become a unified kingdom, its people bound by a shared sense of purpose. Camelot stood as a testament to Arthur's vision, and the Round Table became a symbol of the ideals that guided his reign. Yet Arthur's story was far from over. The seeds of future trials had already been sown, and the king's journey would test his strength, resolve, and heart in ways he could never have imagined. For now, however, Camelot stood as a beacon of hope, a shining example of what could be achieved when a leader's vision is matched by the loyalty and courage of those who follow. Chapter 3. Excalibur and the Lady of the Lake. Arthur's reign had brought stability to Britain, but his challenges were far from over. As the young king worked tirelessly to unite his kingdom, he realized that the strength of his vision alone would not be enough to protect Camelot. He needed a symbol of power, a weapon that could embody his authority and inspire loyalty in both his allies and enemies. It was Merlin who spoke of Excalibur, a legendary sword of unparalleled might, and the mysterious figure known as the Lady of the Lake, who guarded it. The tale began with a journey into the heart of the unknown. Merlin led Arthur and a small retinue to a shimmering lake nestled deep within an enchanted forest. The air grew thick with magic as they approached, the surface of the water unnaturally calm and reflective, like a silver mirror. Arthur, though courageous, felt a sense of awe and reverence in the presence of such otherworldly beauty. As they stood at the lake's edge, the water began to ripple, and from its depths emerged a figure of ethereal grace. The Lady of the Lake, a being both human and otherworldly, rose with the sword Excalibur held aloft in her slender hands. Her voice was melodic, echoing as though it came from the water itself. "Arthur, King of Britain," she began, "this sword is not an ordinary weapon. It is Excalibur, forged in the fires of destiny and cooled in the waters of time. Only a ruler worthy of its power may wield it." Arthur stepped forward, his heart pounding with anticipation. The lady's piercing gaze seemed to peer into his very soul, weighing his worth. After a moment of silence, she smiled faintly and extended the sword toward him. Arthur reached out, and as his hand closed around the hilt, a surge of energy coursed through him. The blade shimmered with a light that seemed to illuminate the entire lake. "Excalibur will grant you the strength to defend your kingdom," the lady said. "But remember this: its true power lies not in its steel, but in the justice of the hand that wields it. Betray that justice, and the sword will betray you." With those words, the Lady of the Lake slowly descended back into the water, vanishing as though she had never been there. Arthur stood in awe, the weight of Excalibur both literal and symbolic. He turned to Merlin, who nodded solemnly. "This sword," Merlin said, "is more than a weapon. It is a promise, a reminder of the responsibility you bear as king." The return to Camelot was triumphant. News of Excalibur's acquisition spread quickly, and the people marveled at the sword's brilliance. Its blade was impossibly sharp, capable of cutting through even the strongest armor, and its hilt was adorned with intricate designs that seemed to shift and shimmer in the light. But it was not merely its physical attributes that inspired awe. Excalibur became a symbol of Arthur's divine right to rule, proof that he was chosen by forces beyond mortal comprehension. Arthur's knights, already loyal to their king, felt a renewed sense of purpose. In a grand ceremony at Camelot, Arthur placed Excalibur before the Round Table and invited each knight to swear an oath of loyalty, not only to him but to the ideals the sword represented. They pledged to uphold justice, protect the innocent, and serve the greater good, even at great personal cost. "Let Excalibur remind us," Arthur declared, "that we serve not for power or glory, but for the people of Britain. May our actions be guided by honor, and may this sword never be raised in injustice." Each knight knelt before Arthur and the sword, swearing their oath with hands pressed to their hearts. Among them were Sir Launcelot, whose unwavering courage made him a natural leader; Sir Gawain, whose loyalty and sense of duty were unmatched; and Sir Percival, whose humility and integrity inspired those around him. Together, they formed the backbone of Camelot's ideals, their bond solidified by their shared commitment to the Round Table. Excalibur's presence transformed Arthur's court. The sword's power became a beacon, attracting knights and allies from far and wide, each eager to serve under a king who wielded such a symbol of justice. Yet, it also made Arthur a target. Enemies of Camelot began to whisper of the sword's magic, and many sought to claim it for themselves. Arthur soon found that possessing Excalibur came with its own set of challenges. On more than one occasion the sword proved vital in battle. During a skirmish against a rebellion led by the ambitious Lord Carados, Arthur and his knights found themselves outnumbered and surrounded. With Excalibur in hand, Arthur cut through the enemy lines with ease, rallying his forces and turning the tide of the battle. Witnessing their king's strength and bravery, the rebels surrendered, acknowledging Arthur as their rightful ruler. But the sword's power also tested Arthur's resolve. As its reputation grew, so too did the temptation to rely solely on its strength. Merlin, ever the watchful mentor, warned Arthur against becoming consumed by the allure of power. "Excalibur is a tool, not a crutch," he reminded the king. "A just ruler's greatest weapon is not steel, but wisdom." Arthur took Merlin's words to heart. He wielded Excalibur with restraint, using it only when justice demanded it. This balance between strength and wisdom became the hallmark of his reign, earning him the respect of his allies and the fear of his enemies. In the years that followed, Excalibur became synonymous with Arthur's legacy. It was not merely a weapon, but a symbol of hope, justice, and unity. The Lady of the Lake's words lingered in Arthur's mind, reminding him that the sword's true power lay in the ideals it represented. As Camelot flourished, Excalibur remained a silent witness to the triumphs and trials of Arthur's reign. It was both a reminder of his divine destiny and a challenge to live up to the ideals he had sworn to uphold. Little did Arthur know, however, that the sword's journey, and his own, was far from over. For as much as Excalibur symbolized light and justice, dark forces stirred in the shadows, waiting for their moment to strike. Chapter 4. The Fellowship of the Round Table. Camelot had become a beacon of hope in Britain, a symbol of unity and strength under King Arthur's just rule. Yet Arthur knew that a kingdom as vast and diverse as his could not thrive on the strength of one man alone. Inspired by the ideals of fairness and equality, Arthur envisioned a fellowship of knights bound not by rank or power, but by shared purpose. Thus, the Round Table was born, a symbol of unity, chivalry, and justice. The Round Table itself was a masterpiece. Crafted by the finest artisans in the land, it was a circle of polished oak, inlaid with intricate carvings representing the virtues of its knights: courage, loyalty, and compassion. Its design was revolutionary. No head of the table meant that all who sat there were equals, from the king himself to the humblest knight. This equality was at the heart of Arthur's vision, a kingdom ruled by cooperation, not domination. Arthur's knights were carefully chosen, each embodying the ideals he sought to uphold. Among the first to join was Sir Gawain, Arthur's nephew and one of his most loyal companions. Gawain was known for his unyielding sense of duty and his unwavering courage. His strength in battle was matched only by his compassion for the weak, making him a cornerstone of the fellowship. Next came Sir Percival, a young knight of humble origins who proved that greatness was not defined by birth. Percival's journey to the Round Table began when he single-handedly defended a village from bandits, earning the admiration of Arthur's knights. His humility and integrity made him an ideal member of the fellowship, and his determination to grow into the role inspired others. One of the most celebrated additions was Sir Galahad, the son of Sir Lancelot. Galahad was a knight of unparalleled purity, chosen by destiny to seek the Holy Grail. His unwavering faith and spiritual strength made him a figure of reverence among the knights, though his perfection often highlighted the flaws in others. Despite his youth, Galahad's wisdom and resolve earned him a place of honor at the Round Table. The fellowship also included knights like Sir Tristan, whose skill with the sword was rivaled only by his tragic love story with Isolde, and Sir Kay, Arthur's foster brother, known for his sharp wit and fiery temper. Each knight brought their own strengths, weaknesses, and stories, creating a diverse and dynamic brotherhood. As the Round Table grew, Arthur established its guiding principles, known as the Code of Chivalry. The knights swore to protect the innocent, uphold justice, and defend the weak. They pledged to fight not for personal glory, but for the greater good of the kingdom. Above all, they vowed to remain loyal to the ideals of Camelot and to each other. The fellowship was more than a council. It was a force for good, sent out into the land to right wrongs and bring hope to those in need. Early on, the knights embarked on a series of quests that solidified their reputation as heroes. Among these adventures was Gawain's encounter with the Green Knight, a mysterious figure who challenged the young knight's honor and tested his resolve. Gawain's courage and cleverness in overcoming the challenge became the stuff of legend, cementing his place as one of Camelot's greatest champions. Percival, too, had his share of trials. On one quest, he stumbled upon a mysterious castle, home to a wounded king known as the Fisher King. Percival's journey to heal the king and uncover the secrets of the Holy Grail would become one of the most pivotal moments in Arthurian legend. His perseverance and pure heart earned him the admiration of his fellow knights and the gratitude of the kingdom. Meanwhile, Sir Lancelot faced challenges of a different kind. Known as the finest swordsman of his age, Lancelot's prowess in battle was unmatched. Yet his greatest trials were those of the heart. His forbidden love for Queen Guinevere created tensions within the fellowship, foreshadowing the conflicts that would one day threaten Camelot's unity. Among the many adventures of the Round Table, few were as daring as the rescue of a young maiden held captive by the sorceress Morgan Le Fay, Arthur's half-sister, and one of his most dangerous adversaries. Morgan sought to undermine Arthur's reign, using her magic to sow discord among the knights. Yet the fellowship's courage and unity proved stronger than her schemes, and they successfully freed the maiden, earning the gratitude of the people. Merlin, ever the watchful guide, played a crucial role in these early quests. Though not a knight himself, his wisdom and foresight were invaluable. He often appeared at key moments, offering cryptic advice or magical assistance. Yet Merlin also warned the knights of the dangers of pride and hubris, reminding them that their true strength lay in their unity and adherence to the code of chivalry. As the fame of the Round Table spread, so too did its influence. Knights from across Britain and beyond sought to join, drawn by the ideals of Camelot and the chance to serve under King Arthur. The fellowship became a symbol of hope, inspiring ordinary people and rulers alike to strive for a better world. Yet, even in these early days, shadows loomed on the horizon. Arthur's vision was ambitious, and the pressures of maintaining such a fellowship were immense. Rivalries among the knights occasionally flared, and the weight of their oaths often tested their resolve. Still, the Round Table endured, a testament to Arthur's leadership and the strength of the ideals that bound them together. By the end of these formative years, the Round Table had become the heart of Camelot, a fellowship of knights united by a shared purpose. Their deeds, both great and small, laid the foundation for the golden age of Arthur's reign. Yet, as the fellowship grew in fame and power, so too did the challenges that would one day threaten to tear it apart. For now, however, the Knights of the Round Table stood as a shining example of what could be achieved through unity, courage, and the pursuit of justice. They were not just warriors. They were the living embodiment of Arthur's dream, a dream that inspired a kingdom and echoed through the ages. Chapter 5. The Quest for the Holy Grail. The glory of Camelot reached its zenith when a mysterious and divine artifact appeared at the heart of the Round Table, the Holy Grail. This sacred relic, believed to be the cup used by Christ at the Last Supper, and to have caught his blood at the crucifixion, was shrouded in an aura of celestial light when it first materialized. Its presence filled the hall with an overwhelming sense of peace and awe, yet none could touch it. A voice echoed through the air, declaring that the Grail would only be attained by the knight most pure of heart. The appearance of the Grail electrified the fellowship, sparking a sense of both wonder and urgency. King Arthur, though deeply moved, expressed hesitation. "This quest," he warned, "will test not only your strength, but your very souls. Not all who set out will return." Despite his caution, the Knights of the Round Table swore an oath to seek the Grail, driven by their devotion to God, Camelot, and the ideals they had pledged to uphold. Among those who took up the quest were Sir Galahad, Sir Percival, and Sir Lancelot, each embarking on a journey that would reveal their deepest strengths and vulnerabilities. Galahad, the son of Sir Lancelot, was widely regarded as the epitome of virtue. Chosen by destiny, he was the first to set out, guided by visions that seemed to come from heaven itself. Along the way, Galahad encountered trials meant to test his faith and resolve. At one point, he came across a ruined chapel guarded by a ferocious lion. Unarmed and alone, Galahad knelt in prayer, and the lion, sensing his purity, withdrew. Galahad's journey brought him to the enchanted ship Solomon's Vessel, which carried him across dangerous waters to the mystical castle of Carbonek, the resting place of the Grail. Here, Galahad was allowed to gaze upon the Grail in all its divine glory. Overcome with rapture, he ascended to heaven, his mortal journey complete. Galahad's success was bittersweet. While his purity earned him the Grail, it also marked the loss of one of Camelot's greatest knights. Sir Percival's quest for the Grail was one of struggle and growth. Born of humble origins, Percival relied not on noble blood, but on his sheer determination and unyielding faith. His journey was filled with temptations, including one particularly harrowing encounter with a beautiful maiden who offered him power and love in exchange for abandoning his quest. Though tempted, Percival ultimately resisted, recognizing the illusion for what it was. Percival's most pivotal moment came when he encountered the wounded Fisher King, the guardian of the Grail. The king's suffering mirrored the spiritual decay of the land, and only the Grail could heal him. Percival's compassion and unwavering pursuit of the Grail allowed him to help restore the king and bring peace to the castle, though he never achieved the divine vision of the Grail itself. His journey was a testament to perseverance, proving that the quest was as much about the effort as the result. While Galahad and Percival pursued the Grail with pure intentions, Sir Lancelot's journey was one of inner conflict. Renowned as the greatest knight in battle, Lancelot's strength on the field was matched by his weakness of spirit. Haunted by his love for Queen Guinevere, he was burdened by guilt and doubt as he sought the Grail. Lancelot's failures were stark. At one point he approached the gates of the castle of Carbonek, only to be thrown back by an invisible force. His sins and inner turmoil made him unworthy to enter. The rejection was a devastating blow to Lancelot, who realized that his strength and skill were meaningless without purity of heart. His quest ended not in triumph, but in self-awareness, as he returned to Camelot humbled by the realization that even the mightiest warrior could fall short without virtue. As the knights ventured far and wide, the Round Table itself began to fracture. The quest for the Grail had drawn many of Arthur's greatest champions away from Camelot, leaving the kingdom vulnerable. Some knights fell in battle, while others succumbed to the temptations and trials of the journey, never to return. When the surviving knights returned to Camelot, they brought with them tales of their trials and losses. The absence of Galahad, who had ascended, and the changed demeanor of Lancelot weighed heavily on the court. Arthur, who had initially warned of the quest's dangers, mourned the loss of unity among his fellowship. Yet the quest was not without meaning. Though the Grail itself remained elusive to most, the journey had revealed profound truths about the knights and their devotion to the ideals of Camelot. Galahad's ascension was a reminder of the power of purity, while Percival's perseverance and Lancelot's failures highlighted the complexity of human nature. The quest became a symbol of striving toward an ideal, even when perfection was unattainable. The Holy Grail, though physically absent, left an indelible mark on Camelot and its knights. It reminded them of the divine purpose behind their fellowship and the importance of humility, faith, and courage. For Arthur, the Grail's presence was a bittersweet reminder of the fragility of human virtue and the challenges of leadership. Though the unity of the Round Table would never fully recover, the story of the Grail and those who pursued it became a lasting legend. It inspired future generations to strive for greatness, even in the face of insurmountable odds. The quest for the Holy Grail, with its triumphs and tragedies, stood as a testament to the ideals of Camelot and the humanity of its knights, a story of seeking something greater than oneself and finding meaning in the journey. Chapter 6. The Tragic Love of Lancelot and Guinevere. In the Golden Age of Camelot, where King Arthur ruled with wisdom and the Knights of the Round Table upheld ideals of chivalry, love bloomed between two of the realm's brightest figures, Sir Lancelot and Queen Guinevere. Their forbidden romance, though born of passion, would become a shadow over Camelot, threatening the unity and ideals that Arthur had fought so hard to build. From the moment Lancelot arrived at Camelot, his bond with Arthur was undeniable. As Arthur's most trusted knight, Lancelot embodied courage, loyalty, and unmatched skill in battle. Yet it was his growing connection with Guinevere that set the stage for tragedy. Guinevere, a queen of grace and intelligence, found in Lancelot a kindred spirit, a man who shared her ideals but also understood the loneliness of life at the center of power. Their love was inevitable, but impossible. Both were bound by duty, Lancelot to his king and Guinevere to her role as queen. Yet, as they spent more time together, whether in the great halls of Camelot or during moments of quiet respite, their feelings grew undeniable. What began as admiration turned to affection, and affection to love, a love that neither could fully embrace nor deny. For a time, Lancelot and Guinevere managed to keep their feelings hidden, but their stolen glances and moments of tenderness did not go unnoticed. The court of Camelot was a place of whispers, where loyalty and rivalry walked hand in hand. Some knights, particularly Sir Agravaine and Sir Mordred, began to suspect the nature of their bond. Their jealousy and ambition turned suspicion into plots, setting the stage for betrayal. The affair weighed heavily on both Lancelot and Guinevere. Lancelot, torn between his love for the Queen and his loyalty to Arthur, found himself plagued by guilt. Guinevere, too, struggled with her dual roles as queen and lover, knowing that her actions could bring ruin to the kingdom she cherished. Yet, despite their guilt, they could not bring themselves to end their love. The tension in Camelot reached a breaking point when Sir Mordred and Sir Agravaine devised a plan to expose the lovers. One night, as Lancelot and Guinevere met in secret, the conspirators laid a trap. Bursting into the room with armed knights, they caught the pair together, forcing Lancelot to fight his way free. Though he managed to escape, the cost was high. Several knights were slain in the confrontation, and the court of Camelot was thrown into turmoil. Guinevere was captured and charged with treason, her infidelity seen as a betrayal not just of Arthur, but of the entire kingdom. The penalty for such a crime was death by burning, and though Arthur was heartbroken, he felt bound by the laws he had sworn to uphold. As Guinevere awaited her fate, the unity of the Round Table began to fracture, with knights taking sides in the growing conflict. Unable to abandon the woman he loved, Lancelot rallied a group of loyal knights to rescue Guinevere. In a daring and bloody raid, he interrupted her execution, carrying her to safety. Though Guinevere's life was spared, the act deepened the rift in Camelot. Arthur, betrayed by both his queen and his closest friend, could not forgive the betrayal, even as he mourned the loss of the fellowship they had built together. The rescue sparked a war among the knights of the Round Table. Those loyal to Arthur saw Lancelot's actions as treason, while others believed his love for Guinevere justified his defiance. Battles broke out across the land, and the once unified kingdom descended into chaos. The tragedy of Lancelot and Guinevere's love was not just their own, but that of Camelot itself. The ideals of the Round Table, unity, justice, and loyalty, were shattered as knights turned against one another. Arthur, burdened by grief and betrayal, sought counsel from Merlin, who could offer little comfort. Even the greatest of kingdoms, Merlin warned, cannot stand against the weight of a broken heart. As the war raged on, Arthur faced an even greater threat. Mordred, his illegitimate son, seized the opportunity to challenge Arthur's rule. Claiming the throne for himself, Mordred rallied those disillusioned by the fall of Camelot. Arthur's divided kingdom now faced a final devastating confrontation. Guinevere and Lancelot, though deeply in love, were forced to part ways. Guinevere, consumed by guilt over the destruction their affair had caused, sought refuge in a convent, dedicating the remainder of her life to prayer and repentance. Lancelot, heartbroken and weary from the endless conflict, retired to a hermitage, living out his days in solitude. Their separation marked the end of an era. The love that had once burned so brightly was extinguished, leaving only memories and regrets. Yet their story became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the fragile balance between love and duty, and the devastating consequences of betrayal. The tragedy of Lancelot and Guinevere's love reverberated throughout the kingdom. Camelot, once a shining beacon of hope, was now a shadow of its former self. The knights of the Round Table, once bound by their shared ideals, were scattered or slain. Arthur, though still king, stood alone, his dream of a united and just Britain reduced to ashes. Yet, even in its downfall, Camelot's legacy endured. The story of Lancelot and Guinevere, with all its beauty and tragedy, became an integral part of Arthurian legend, a symbol of the complex and often conflicting nature of human emotions. Their love, though forbidden, was real, and its echoes would continue to inspire and caution future generations. As the sun set on Camelot, the ideals of the Round Table, honor, loyalty, and courage, remained a testament to what could be achieved, even in the face of human imperfection. The tragedy of Lancelot and Guinevere was not just a story of love and betrayal, but a reflection of the challenges that come with striving for greatness in an imperfect world. Chapter 7. Mordred's Treachery. As the sun began to set on Camelot's golden age, the kingdom faced its darkest hour. At the heart of this downfall was Mordred, a man whose bloodline tied him to King Arthur, but whose ambitions sought to destroy him. Mordred's treachery would shatter the unity of the Round Table and plunge Britain into chaos, marking the beginning of the end for Arthur's reign. Mordred's story was one of scandal and prophecy. He was born of a forbidden union between Arthur and Morgause, the king's half-sister, though Arthur was unaware of their familial connection at the time. Morgause, fueled by her own ambitions and resentment toward Arthur, raised Mordred with whispers of vengeance and entitlement. From an early age, Mordred was taught to see himself not as a loyal subject of Camelot, but as its rightful ruler. Merlin, upon learning of Mordred's birth, was filled with dread. Prophecies had long foretold that a son born of such circumstances would bring about Arthur's downfall. Despite Merlin's warnings, Arthur chose to honor the boy's place at Camelot, believing that blood could be thicker than ambition. Mordred was granted a seat at the Round Table, a decision that would come to haunt the king. At first, Mordred played the role of a loyal knight, earning the respect of his peers and hiding his true intentions. Yet beneath his polished facade, envy and resentment festered. Mordred saw the glory of Camelot as his inheritance and viewed Arthur not as a noble king, but as a usurper standing in the way of his destiny. Mordred's opportunity came when the kingdom was at its most vulnerable. Arthur, seeking to restore order and defend Britain's borders, led his knights on a campaign against a rebellion in a distant part of the realm. With the king and many of Camelot's greatest warriors away, Mordred seized his chance. While Arthur was preoccupied with his campaign, Mordred declared himself king. Manipulating the trust placed in him as Arthur's kin, he spread rumors that Arthur had fallen in battle. The court, confused and leaderless, was divided. Some believed Mordred's claims, while others were suspicious of his motives. Using charm and intimidation in equal measure, Mordred consolidated power, gaining the loyalty of those disillusioned by the recent conflicts that had plagued Camelot. Mordred's coup was swift and ruthless. He occupied Camelot, took the throne, and declared his reign as the true and rightful ruler of Britain. To solidify his claim, he sought to marry Queen Guinevere, further entwining himself with the royal lineage. Guinevere, horrified by Mordred's actions, fled to a sanctuary, refusing to become a pawn in his schemes. The usurpation sent shockwaves through the kingdom. The Knights of the Round Table, already fractured by years of conflict, found themselves divided once more. Some, believing the rumors of Arthur's death, reluctantly pledged loyalty to Mordred, hoping to preserve stability. Others, loyal to Arthur and his vision of Camelot, went into hiding or began plotting their resistance. With Camelot under Mordred's control, the kingdom descended into chaos. The ideals of the Round Table, justice, loyalty, and unity, were trampled underfoot as Mordred's reign sowed distrust and division. Once loyal knights turned against one another, each trying to navigate the treacherous waters of a kingdom without clear leadership. Rebellion brewed in every corner of the land. Villages that had once prospered under Arthur's rule now faced raids and lawlessness. The people, uncertain whom to trust, grew desperate and fearful. Camelot, once a shining beacon of hope, had become a symbol of tyranny under Mordred's rule. Word of Mordred's betrayal eventually reached Arthur, who was still leading his forces far from Camelot. Furious and heartbroken, he rallied his knights and began the arduous journey back to reclaim his throne. Along the way, Arthur reflected on the betrayal of his kin and the warnings he had ignored. Mordred's actions were a painful reminder of the fragility of trust and the price of misplaced mercy. As Arthur approached Camelot, his forces swelled with knights and allies who had remained loyal to him. Yet even with this support, the king knew that the coming battle would not be easily won. Mordred's grip on the kingdom was strong, and many of Camelot's defenders, now under Mordred's command, were former allies of Arthur. The battlefield would pit brother against brother, friend against friend. Arthur and Mordred's armies clashed on the plains outside Camelot in a battle that would decide the fate of Britain. The fighting was brutal and relentless, with neither side willing to yield. Arthur, wielding Excalibur, fought with the strength of a man determined to save not only his kingdom, but the ideals it represented. As the sun set on the battlefield, Arthur and Mordred finally faced each other. The two men, bound by blood but divided by ambition, engaged in a duel that would become the stuff of legend. Arthur, though wounded and weary, struck Mordred a mortal blow with Excalibur. Yet in his final act of defiance, Mordred dealt Arthur a grievous wound, fulfilling the prophecy that had loomed over their lives. With Mordred defeated, Arthur's forces emerged victorious, but the cost was immeasurable. The battlefield was littered with the fallen, and the unity of Camelot was irreparably shattered. Arthur, gravely injured, was carried from the field by Sir Bedivere, one of his last loyal knights. As they reached a quiet lake, Arthur instructed Bedivere to return Excalibur to its watery resting place with the Lady of the Lake. Reluctantly, Bedivere fulfilled Arthur's request, casting the legendary sword into the lake. The hand of the lady emerged to catch it, drawing Excalibur back into the depths. Arthur, his strength fading, gazed upon the horizon, murmuring of Avalon, the mythical land where he hoped to find rest and healing. Camelot, though victorious in battle, was left a kingdom in mourning. The betrayal of Mordred had not only cost the lives of countless knights, but had also broken the ideals that once made the Round Table a symbol of hope. Yet, even in its fall, Camelot's legacy endured as a reminder of what could be achieved through unity and the consequences of unchecked ambition. As for Arthur, his body was never found, fueling the belief that he would one day return in Britain's hour of greatest need. The story of Mordred's treachery became a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the greatest of kingdoms could be undone by betrayal within. Chapter 8. The Battle of Camlan. The journey back to Camelot was a somber one for King Arthur. He had left a kingdom united under his rule, a beacon of justice and hope, only to return to a realm divided by treachery. Mordred, the son he had never intended to have, had seized the throne in his absence, sowing discord and plunging Britain into chaos. The betrayal cut deep, but Arthur's resolve was unshaken. He would reclaim Camelot no matter the cost. Arthur's forces were not as mighty as they had once been. Years of war and the fracturing of the Round Table had left his army diminished. Yet those who remained were fiercely loyal, knights and soldiers who believed in Arthur's vision of a just kingdom. As they marched toward Camelot, more allies joined them, inspired by tales of Arthur's return. Still, Arthur knew they faced a daunting challenge. Mordred's army was strong, fortified by those who had turned against Camelot or believed the lies Mordred spread about Arthur's death and betrayal. When Arthur and his forces arrived at Camlan, the fields were already occupied by Mordred's army. The air was heavy with tension, the sky darkened by gathering storm clouds. Across the battlefield, Arthur saw the banners of his kingdom flying under Mordred's command, a bitter sight that drove home the gravity of the confrontation. Mordred stood at the head of his army, clad in black armor that seemed to absorb the light. The son and the father locked eyes across the expanse, a silent acknowledgement of the inevitable. The battle began with the sounding of horns, and the two armies clashed with a ferocity unmatched in Britain's history. Steel met steel, and the cries of men and horses filled the air. Arthur's forces, though smaller in number, fought with the desperation of those who knew their cause was just. Mordred's soldiers, bolstered by the belief that they were fighting for a rightful king, were equally determined to defend their claim. Arthur led his men from the front, Excalibur gleaming in his hand. The sword, a gift from the Lady of the Lake, cut through Mordred's ranks like a beacon of light in the chaos. Wherever Arthur fought, his presence rallied his troops, inspiring them to push forward. But Mordred, too, was a commanding presence on the battlefield. He fought with a ruthless precision, his strikes calculated and unyielding. The battlefield became a deadly chessboard, with neither side willing to yield an inch. Hours passed, and the tide of battle shifted back and forth. The land, once green and vibrant, was trampled and bloodied underfoot. The Knights of the Round Table, those who still remained, fought valiantly beside their king. Sir Bedivere, Arthur's faithful companion, stayed close to his side, shielding him from the worst of the chaos. Yet even the greatest warriors could not escape the inevitability of war. Many fell that day, their dreams of Camelot's unity dying with them. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting an eerie red glow over the battlefield, Arthur and Mordred finally met face to face. The fighting around them seemed to pause, as if the very land understood the significance of the moment. Arthur, weary but resolute, raised Excalibur, the sword that had symbolized his reign and the ideals of Camelot. Mordred, his armor splattered with the blood of friend and foe alike, raised his own blade, a dark reflection of his father's. The clash of their swords echoed across the battlefield, a sound that silenced even the fiercest combatants. Arthur struck with the strength of a man who fought not just for victory, but for the soul of his kingdom. Mordred countered with the fury of a son who believed he had been denied his rightful place. Their duel was a brutal dance of skill and determination, each strike and parry a testament to their strength and resolve. Arthur managed to disarm Mordred, driving him to the ground. For a moment it seemed the battle might end there. Arthur hesitated, his sword poised to deliver the final blow. Despite all that had happened, Mordred was still his son, a painful reminder of a mistake made long ago. But Mordred, defiant to the last, seized a broken spear from the ground and thrust it into Arthur's side. Arthur staggered, Excalibur slipping from his grasp, as pain coursed through his body. With his remaining strength, he swung his sword one final time, striking Mordred down. The younger man collapsed, his life extinguished by the father he had sought to destroy. With Mordred's death, the battlefield fell eerily silent. The surviving soldiers of both armies lowered their weapons, the weight of the tragedy sinking in. Arthur, mortally wounded, was carried from the field by Sir Bedivere. They found refuge near a tranquil lake, its waters shimmering under the light of the setting sun. Arthur, knowing his end was near, instructed Bedivere to return Excalibur to the Lady of the Lake. Bedivere, reluctant to part with the legendary sword, hesitated twice before finally fulfilling his king's command. As he cast Excalibur into the water, a hand emerged, catching the blade and drawing it beneath the surface. Arthur, his strength fading, spoke softly of Avalon, the mystical isle where he hoped to find rest and healing. As the mists of the lake began to rise, a small boat appeared, its deck shrouded in an otherworldly glow. Arthur was placed aboard, his body weary but his spirit unbroken. As the boat drifted into the fog, Bedivere knelt at the shore, tears streaming down his face. The Battle of Camlan had ended, but at a terrible cost. Camelot, once a beacon of hope, lay fractured and leaderless. The Round Table was broken, its knights scattered or slain. Yet even in its fall, the ideals of Camelot endured. Arthur's story became a legend, a symbol of justice, loyalty, and the pursuit of a greater good. Some believed he would return in Britain's hour of greatest need, while others saw his passing as the end of an era. The field of Camlan, now silent and still, bore the scars of a kingdom's final battle. Yet, amid the ruin, the legacy of King Arthur lived on, a reminder that even in the face of betrayal and tragedy, the pursuit of unity and justice is a cause worth fighting for. Chapter 9. The Death of King Arthur. The Battle of Camlan had ended, but the victory was hollow. Though Mordred lay dead on the blood-soaked field, King Arthur's mortal wound signaled the twilight of Camelot. The once great king, who had united Britain and inspired generations with his vision of justice and unity, now faced the end of his earthly journey. Yet, even in his final moments, Arthur's legacy would transcend the mortal realm, ensuring his place in legend for all time. Arthur's loyal knight, Sir Bedivere, cradled the wounded king as they fled the battlefield. Arthur's once proud armor was battered and stained with blood, his breath labored and shallow. Though his strength waned, his resolve remained unbroken. Bedivere, grief-stricken but steadfast, carried his king to a nearby lake, its still waters shimmering under the fading light of the setting sun. As they reached the lake's edge, Arthur's voice, weak but steady, broke the silence. "Bedivere," he said, "the time has come. Take Excalibur and return it to the Lady of the Lake. It is not meant for mortal hands to keep." Bedivere hesitated, unwilling to part with the sword that had symbolized Arthur's reign and the ideals of Camelot. Twice he approached the water, and twice he faltered, hiding the sword and returning to Arthur with a falsehood that he had fulfilled the command. Arthur, sensing the truth, gazed at Bedivere with weary eyes. "You must do this, my friend," he urged. "Excalibur is more than a weapon. It is a covenant. Its return marks the end of my reign, but it also ensures that its power remains beyond the reach of those unworthy." Overcome with shame and sorrow, Bedivere took the sword for a third time and cast it into the lake. As the blade left his hands, the lake stirred, and a slender arm clad in shimmering white rose from the water. The hand caught Excalibur by its hilt and slowly drew it beneath the surface, the waters calming once more. Bedivere, awestruck, returned to Arthur and recounted what he had seen. The king nodded, his lips curling into a faint smile. "The lady has reclaimed what is hers. My time here is done." Arthur's gaze turned toward the horizon, where a mist began to rise over the lake. As the fog thickened, a small boat emerged, its hull glinting with an otherworldly light. On board were figures cloaked in white, their faces obscured, exuding a serene and mystical presence. Bedivere helped Arthur onto the boat, his hands trembling as he placed the king on its deck. "I am going to Avalon," Arthur murmured, his voice barely audible. "There I shall rest, and perhaps find healing. But my fate lies not in this world." Bedivere knelt at the water's edge, tears streaming down his face as he watched the boat drift into the mist, carrying Arthur away from mortal sight. The mists of Avalon enveloped the boat, and soon it vanished entirely, leaving only the still waters of the lake behind. Bedivere, now alone, felt the weight of his grief press heavily upon him. The greatest king Britain had ever known was gone, leaving the kingdom without its leader, and the Round Table without its heart. News of Arthur's passing spread quickly, plunging Camelot into mourning. The knights of the Round Table, those who had survived the battle, returned to a kingdom forever changed. Camelot's great halls, once filled with laughter and camaraderie, now stood empty and silent, a shadow of their former glory. The ideals of unity and justice that Arthur had championed seemed distant, overshadowed by the losses suffered in the final days of his reign. Yet even as the kingdom mourned, whispers of hope began to emerge. Many believed that Arthur's departure was not the end, but the beginning of a new chapter. Stories spread that the king was not truly dead, but resting in Avalon, awaiting Britain's hour of greatest need. According to legend, Arthur would return when the kingdom faced its darkest moment, rising again to unite his people and restore Camelot's ideals. The prophecy of Arthur's return became a cornerstone of British folklore, passed down through generations. The phrase, "the once and future king," echoed in tales and songs, a reminder that Arthur's legacy was eternal. For many, the legend offered solace in times of turmoil, a symbol of hope and resilience that transcended the boundaries of history and myth. As centuries passed, Arthur's story continued to inspire. His ideals of chivalry, justice, and unity became a model for leaders and a source of reflection for those seeking to build a better world. The Knights of the Round Table, though long gone, remained symbols of courage and honor. Their deeds immortalized in tales that celebrated the pursuit of greatness, even in the face of imperfection. Camelot, though reduced to ruins, became a site of pilgrimage, a place where people from all walks of life could reflect on the values that Arthur had championed. The Round Table, though broken, was remembered as a symbol of equality and shared purpose, an enduring reminder of what could be achieved through unity and cooperation. For Sir Bedivere, the loss of Arthur was both a personal and collective tragedy. He spent his remaining days as a hermit, tending to the memories of Camelot, and reflecting on the king who had changed the course of his life. Though he lived in solitude, Bedivere never wavered in his belief that Arthur's spirit endured, watching over the land he had loved and fought for. The death of King Arthur marked the end of an era, but it also ensured his place in legend. His journey to Avalon, the return of Excalibur, and the prophecy of his return became timeless symbols of hope and renewal. Arthur's story, a blend of history and myth, continued to shape the identity of Britain and the imagination of the world. In the stillness of the lake, where the mists of Avalon once rose, there lingers a quiet sense of mystery. Perhaps one day the waters will stir again, and the once and future king will rise to lead his people into a new golden age. Until that day, his legend lives on, an eternal beacon of the ideals that Camelot once represented. Chapter 10. The Legacy of Camelot. The fall of Camelot marked the end of a golden era for Britain, a time when unity, justice, and hope had seemed within reach. The great halls of Camelot, once filled with laughter and the camaraderie of the Round Table, now stood silent, their walls bearing witness to the weight of shattered dreams. The knights, scattered or slain, and King Arthur's journey to Avalon left a kingdom grieving for what had been lost. Yet, even in its ruin, Camelot endured. Not as a place, but as an idea, a vision of what humanity could strive for. The fall of Camelot was not simply the result of betrayal or war, but a reflection of human frailty. The ideals of the Round Table, honor, courage, and unity, were noble aspirations, yet they were tested and often broken by the complexities of ambition, love, and loyalty. Arthur's vision was grand, but it depended on the imperfect hearts of men to sustain it. Mordred's treachery, Lancelot and Guinevere's forbidden love, and the fragmented loyalties of the knights all contributed to the kingdom's collapse. Yet, these very imperfections made Camelot's story timeless and relatable. The ideals of the Round Table lived on, even as the physical table was broken. The knights had sworn to protect the innocent, uphold justice, and serve the greater good. These values became a moral compass, inspiring generations of leaders, warriors, and ordinary people. While Camelot itself was gone, its principles transcended time, shaping the cultural and ethical identity of Britain. Arthur's leadership was built on more than strength and strategy. It was rooted in the belief that unity could overcome division, that a kingdom built on shared purpose could thrive. His creation of the Round Table, where all knights were equal regardless of their station, symbolized this vision. The table was not merely a piece of furniture, it was a revolutionary idea, one that challenged the hierarchical norms of the time and celebrated the power of collective decision-making. The stories of Camelot became the foundation of Arthurian legend, passed down through oral tradition, written chronicles, and literary masterpieces. These tales preserved the memory of Arthur, Guinevere, Lancelot, and the knights, evolving with each retelling. From Geoffrey of Monmouth's Historia Regum Britannia to Sir Thomas Malory's Le Morte d'Arthur, the legends grew richer, embedding themselves in Britain's cultural fabric. In these stories, King Arthur became more than a historical figure. He became a symbol of hope. The prophecy of Arthur's return in Britain's hour of greatest need offered solace during turbulent times. Wars, invasions, and internal strife tested the nation. Yet the idea of the once and future king inspired resilience and unity. Arthur's promise to rise again reflected the belief that greatness, though lost, could always be reclaimed. The Round Table's ideals also influenced the development of chivalry, a code of conduct that shaped medieval knighthood and courtly life. Honor, loyalty, and respect for the weak became aspirational virtues, with Arthurian legend serving as a guide. Knights in both fiction and reality sought to emulate the heroes of Camelot, striving to balance martial prowess with moral integrity. Camelot's legacy extended beyond Britain, captivating audiences across Europe and beyond. The ideals of the Round Table resonated universally, offering a vision of a just society governed by principles rather than power. Writers, poets, and artists drew inspiration from the legend, crafting works that explored the complexities of honor, love, and betrayal. From Alfred, Lord Tennyson's Idylls of the King, to modern adaptations in film and literature, the story of Camelot continued to evolve, finding new relevance in each generation. The ruins of Camelot, though scattered and lost to time, became symbolic sites of pilgrimage. The mythical Avalon, shrouded in mystery, remained a place of wonder and speculation, where some believed Arthur rested, awaiting his return. These places, whether real or imagined, connected people to a shared cultural heritage, a reminder of the enduring power of myth. Even as history moved on, Camelot's legacy influenced the identity of Britain. The ideals of justice and unity championed by Arthur reflected the aspirations of a nation striving to find balance in the face of change. Leaders invoked Arthurian imagery to inspire loyalty and hope, while artists and storytellers used the legend to explore timeless themes of human ambition and frailty. In modern times, Camelot remains a touchstone for those seeking to understand the complexities of leadership, morality, and the human condition. The rise and fall of Arthur's kingdom serve as a reminder that even the greatest visions can falter when confronted with human imperfection. Yet, the enduring hope of Arthur's return reflects a belief in redemption and the possibility of renewal. As the sun sets on the story of Camelot, its light continues to shine, illuminating the ideals that defined it: honor, courage, and unity. These are the principles that made Camelot more than a kingdom. They made it a legend, and legends, unlike kingdoms, are eternal. In the stillness of the lake where Excalibur was returned, in the whispered tales of Avalon's mists, and in the hearts of those who dream of a better world, Camelot lives on. It is not a place, but a promise, a vision of what humanity can achieve when guided by the best within us. And as long as there are those who believe in that promise, the legacy of King Arthur and the Round Table will endure, inspiring the world to strive for the ideals that once made Camelot great.